Howdy, thought I would throw together a quick video on my fixes to a game of life script someone sent me. So, to put it real simply, I like to use a whole bunch of functions, and my game of life implementation is centered around this process called step. So step is going to take a grid. It's a list of lists, a kind of 2D set of either spaces, single character spaces for nothing, or pound sign for a living cell. And the first thing I'm going to do is make a copy of it. Then I'm going to go through every cell in YX order, and I'm going to count their neighbors. That's another function. The only thing that function does is count up the cells around it. Then we're going to write to the copy, the new array, whatever the result should be. And that's also a different function. So let's go look at those two. So the game of life rules, these 3 lines are copied from Wikipedia. Just means whatever those rules say, return a space or a pound sign if the cell should be alive or dead. And it looks at what the current value is and how many neighbors it has. Then there's count neighbors. This function actually had a bug in it because of range. Range doesn't include your second number, so if you want to cover -1, 0, and 1, you have to put in a range of -1 and 2. So I just put 1 plus 1 because what we really care about is getting -1, 0, and 1, right, for both the y direction and the x direction. So I figured that out by adding a print statement and realizing that this thing did not show what I expected it to show every time it was counting neighbors. Then I made a couple of display functions, which are much nicer than mixing up your game logic and your display code. And then I made some test cases. So the first test case is just 9 cells, 3 by 3, with 1 live cell in the middle. And according to the game of life, this should die on the next round. And even when there was bugs, that part was still working. The next one is a glider. So pretty simple to just see that in the grid itself, and that'll display on the screen and move once we display it. And I also have a randomizer here, which picks a width and height. Another thing is none of my functions reference a global variable for the width and height. They use either the length of the first row or the length of the grid list itself, which is the number of columns. So all that's left then is the main loop, which starts off by getting a grid. Could easily change this to randomized by just switching that out. And then I just limited it to 20 steps, and here's what that looks like. So if we go to the first generation, there's my glider, and then it's going to scoot through. And let me just show off those display functions real quick. So if I were to say g equals test grid 2, we display G, that's just going to give us the glider. I added some asterisks just to help see the edge of the board. It's helpful when there's a lot of blanks. So now if I were to say G2 is the step after G, we can display that too, and that's just scooted forward 1 generation. We can also do display changes for G. And what that does is it actually takes the grid G, which we can see here, it generates the step internally, and it marks the cells with an A and a D that are becoming alive or becoming dead in that generation. So that was helpful for me to find a bug. And then there's also display neighbors of G. And what that gives you is the numbers for the neighbors result. So I was seeing errors in this too, which was helping me track down bugs. So I'll share that code, and that helped me figure out the problem and debug the piece of software. Have a good one.